Hello everyone, I hope everyone's having a great day. My name's Christopher Tackett, and welcome to the first video for Polyforge, the company I created several years ago for 3D printing prototype parts for toys. Now this company is going to be dedicated to creating some high quality sculpts for miniatures, statues, or whatever else I plan on developing. My background is in product design and 3D sculpting for the last 20 years, and also toy sculpting for the last 8 years. For this last year and a half, I've been sculpting miniatures for Kourakos' Kickstarter campaigns. I hope I didn't get his name too wrong there, but he's also known as 3D Printing Pro on YouTube. His latest Kickstarter being Anime Dungeons, where we've injected some anime flavor into the models. The style being like deep cut Dragon Ball Z-like muscles, large eyes and brows, some crazy expressions here and there, especially with the goblins we've created. Some wild goblins we've got. There's also some cute pets for your characters as well. If you're interested in it, the link is in the description below. We haven't really seen too many anime-themed Kickstarters. Sure, there's been some anime miniatures done before, but not quite this extensively. We've got a rather large selection in this Kickstarter. This channel will be dedicated mainly to 3D sculpting tips that I've learned over the years since I picked up ZBrush in version 1.55 nearly 20 years ago. I'll probably be making some videos of sculpting miniatures or other models from start to finish as well. There's other ideas for videos that I have involving miniatures, but for now I'll probably stick with tips and making of videos until I see some responses and determine if people actually want this or not. In this video, I'll be concentrating on how I clean up parts for printing, which is really an important step in the final creation of STL files. I've created a ton of miniatures for a couple of Greg's Kickstarter campaigns, and I wanted to show how I clean and create reliable models for printing. And before I start, please remember to hit the like and subscribe if you end up liking this video, because I'd like to be able to create more of these videos regularly, and the more I see people want it, the more I'll likely continue. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with the first ZBrush tips video from Polyforge. Okay, so this dwarf model is going to be the one that I'm going to demonstrate, how we clean these models up to make them as printable as possible with as little imperfections as possible. This one is composed of a lot of separate pieces, like this individual beard section. We got the pipes separate, we've got the helmet separate. All these pieces are overlapping to try and make, when they're merged, one single piece. But the problem is when you merge a bunch of items like this, they won't always create one perfect piece. There's usually some imperfections on the inside, some floating negative area spaces where, say, liquid resin could get trapped in, or it could create trenches that go down deep into the model that are hard to spot unless you really know what you're looking for. And these trenches can trap liquid resin in there, and even when during post-curing, maybe just the outermost part of that trench may get cured over top of the rest of the liquid inside, thereby creating this intersection that's of liquid resin that's kind of trapped. And then over time, with temperature changes, this could cause problems in the model and could create cracks. You know, who knows, like years from now or months, or, you know, depending on the weather, or, you know, how bad the imperfection is. Anyway, so what I normally do with these is I will merge all these pieces into one, although with this particular model I've actually got several folders that would actually separate parts. So like I separated the right hand out, that's actually a separate piece. The shield is a separate piece. The armor was actually a separate piece too for the hands. The pipe was separate. But I think everything that's visible here will end up being one piece. So I will go ahead and merge all of that, and I will pause it so you guys aren't waiting as well. Okay, so I've booleaned everything into one piece, and we'll see if we can identify some of these imperfections. Basically what I just did here is I flipped the normals of the polygons inside out to kind of see what's going on the inside. And we can see in this area around the neck there's some floaty bits or some trenches in there. We can see in this crotch region some geometry that's kind of creeping in there, creating some weird negative space that will definitely have resin trapped in there. Now this is just a straight up merge of all those pieces as they overlapped. What I can do next is use a function in ZBrush called Dynamesh, which will basically do the same thing as what I just did, except any areas that were floating by themselves, any negative spaces inside that were not connected to the outside, those will disappear. So we'll start there. I will pause it to do that function. Okay, so I ran the Dynamesh function on there, and we will see, take a look on the inside again, see if that helped alleviate some of these issues. Most of these issues still remain. There's like this really big area where the head of the dwarf didn't quite overlap the helmet, so that will need to be addressed. This area here, I'll hide everything but this section here. We'll take a closer look on the inside of the head, the area inside the mouth, right around the neck. These are all areas that have negative space where it could cause some problems. So what I do in these situations, there's several tactics that I use to try and combat these issues. We'll start with one of the easier ones. We'll start with this crotch area here, where we've got a trench kind of going from the front to the back. We got these little bits hanging off here. What I tend to do in these situations is I'll use a function in ZBrush called Sculptors Pro and kind of smooth off some of these areas, which will end up cutting off the inner trench from the outside, and then I can just delete the rest of that trench. So from this side, I'll start on this side. I'll just kind of smooth this part and cut that off. This goes all the way over here, and actually what I'll do on this section, because it's pretty thick to try and smooth, I will mask this part right here. And then if I make everything else visible, I can use this other function called group masked. I'll do that, and it groups that strip that I had masked, which I can then delete. I can delete hidden, and then I can also, if I select just the outside edge of that model, and I go and I grow all, anything that's touching that section there will become visible. But since that other part was floating, it's not. That section is gone. That's the section that I cut off. And actually there's some other floaty bits that were not connected as well. But now I can delete those areas. Delete hidden, and now that those floaty bits are gone, I actually have a hole now where that other area I deleted was. It's right about there. I can close holes, and that'll patch that area back up right there. And then I'll go in and I'll smooth that again just a little bit so it's not quite so bad there. And of course I've got that other little thing sticking off there. Whoops. My computer's trying to catch up with what I'm trying to tell it to do. I'll again use Sculptors Pro mode to kind of section that off. Actually, I could probably just get rid of that like that with Sculptors Pro Smooth. There we go. Okay, so we've addressed kind of that crotch area. Not too bad, from the bottom side. It's it's hard to tell from the bottom side that it's really anything's really different, but on the inside it's definitely different. These little things you might not notice with these kind of flaws in a model. It's interesting because I'll look at some professional models that were done by some of the larger companies. I'm not going to name these companies, but sometimes the models that I've opened up look fantastic and everything's pretty well cleaned. Other times I see like negative space going on the underside of like plate armor, where the plate armor wasn't fully merged or overlapping with like the chest area. And so areas like that can trap resin and cause all kinds of problems, down the road. Nobody wants liquid resin mixed in with their paints or cracks developing later. So, other little things. I'll just show a couple more little things that I'll do with this model, and then I'll show a finished version of the cleaned model. See that little trench right there? I can just smooth that, get rid of that, do the same thing where I'll grow everything that's attached to that outside, then delete hidden, and that section is now gone. So that's basically the way I approach this. I might try one more here. This section of the neck could be a problem. See if I can get this to where I can see just that trench. And then I will smooth out that area. This area under the neck, I'd actually like to kind of pinch that to where it's not so wide underneath. So if I show you from this side, you've got this negative space going way under there. Could be hard to clean. I can make that cleaner and easier to paint. So that's what I will do. Got it from this side as well. I'd like to create a more pinched version, more of a crease right there. Got another brush that I've made for dealing with that. Alright. Oops. Let me make sure I didn't. There we go. And that's looking a lot better under that helmet there. Okay, so let me bring up the finished model. Give me a few minutes, and I will be right back. Okay, here's the finished model. Obviously you're not going to see too much difference on the outside, but on the inside it is much cleaner. Let me see if I can just do this so you can see just one half of it. You can see how clean it is now on this inside section. I cleaned up under the shoulder pad areas. I cleaned up along the belt, along the crotch area. I also cleaned up where the braid overlaps, the torso area, whereas before, and I can switch to my previous model here. You can see in the previous model how the area around the braid, it had a trench there as well, among other areas that were kind of sticking in that'd be kind of hard to clean up. So I dealt with that, and this is now how that looks. So see these areas where resin will come in, it's not a tight little area where it could just kind of gather and not get cleaned out. So these are the things that Greg and I try to address when getting you these models. We want you to have these models for a long time, and we kind of take pride in getting you models that are beautiful and clean, easy to paint, and fun. It's no fun having a model crack on you months down the road, or liquid resin getting mixed in with your paint if you didn't clean it all that well. Oh, and here's one tip that I learned from working at a toy sculpting company. My boss, he bought a sandblasting machine. Now, I'm not saying to go out and buy a sandblasting machine, but basically this was a machine that had a clear plastic cover to it, but had two openings in the front where you could stick your hands in, and it had a hose in there that you could hook up to a compressor. and it would spray compressed air pretty forcefully, and it was excellent at blasting off like excess resin. Like as soon as you brought the model out of your acetone or your isopropyl alcohol bath, you could use this compressor to blast off the excess resin in areas like under the shoulder pad here, or deep in other crevices that normally you can't get to, even with like a toothbrush. Some areas are just hard to get clean. And it's just a tip that we used doing toy prototypes that allowed us to create near flawless prototypes. And we never had any issues with liquid resin, being left behind. Anything that he couldn't get with blasting it out was usually cured with post-curing. And because we dealt with the same issues with the trenches or the negative spaces that resin would collect in, we never had any of those issues, and we created some pretty good prototypes that way. So just thought I'd make this video to kind of share the tips that I've learned, and to get the word out that Greg and I are creating some pretty solid models, and I hope you visit our Kickstarter and contribute, and hopefully if this is successful we can continue to do this. Thanks for watching.